Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Savage Goose Show. I'm Goose, and on this show, we talk about all things Savage Worlds, usually just from the past week, but we're going to talk about all the news. And after that, we're then going to talk about why do people skip Savage Worlds? Why do people look at Savage Worlds and they say, that doesn't look like it's for me? But also, why do people come back to it? Why do people eventually realize that they were wrong about Savage Worlds? We're going to talk about that. So if you have any insight into that, what reasons you've seen in the past, why people decide that, hey, you know what, Savage Worlds isn't for me, let us know down in the comments below. Let us down there, and we'll talk more about that. Let's see here. So starting off, we're going to go ahead and let me go ahead and show my screen here. Here we go. So we're going to start off by talking about the newsletter, if it came in, which I don't think it has yet. If it does come in while we're on the show, we'll go ahead and do that. If it comes in while we're in this beginning portion, I'll jump in and do that then. If it comes in after I'm done talking about, or if it comes in while I'm talking about the reasons why people skip Savage Worlds, we'll do that then afterwards. We'll interrupt that part of the stream, but just we'll be able to look up for that. But no newsletter currently. So let's go ahead and jump in and talk about Kickstarters. First thing, this is starting next week, launches Tuesday, July 22nd. Doomguard from Pinnacle. This is a cooperative board game where you play as superheroes fighting off different monsters, Cthulhu and other monsters like that. And say you're playing you are playing as heroes, part of the Doomguard, and you are playing the same universe as Necessary Evil. If you're familiar with the Necessary Evil setting from Savage Worlds, it's a pretty well-known setting. It's one I haven't quite got myself onto yet. Superpowers doesn't seem to be the kind of thing that my players are super interested in. But this is a cooperative board game that Pinnacle is releasing. It looks like it's going to be really well made, really high quality. There's going to be 3D printed minis, or not 3D printed. There's going to be minis. There's a 3D resin minis, I think is what it is. Maybe not resin on, the minis are made of different stuff. But there's going to be some nice minis, and there's going to be a nice board, nice tokens, everything. Looks like it's going to be really well done. Take a look at that. There's a link for that Kickstarter down below. So if you want to follow it so you're notified when it's launched, you can do that. You also got information for the Savage Phase World, which is a Rifts Dimension setting. This is not being done by Pinnacle. This is instead being done by Star Anvil Studios. This is technically the same world as Rifts. So if you are familiar with Rifts for Savage Worlds, it is the same kind of larger universe, but this is particularly out in space, same kind of ideas, but a little bit different. And this is being licensed through Star Anvil Studios, who is working on it. We have some information already about it, such that it is going to require the core rulebook, it's going to require the sci-fi companion, and is going to be compatible with Rifts, but you do not need Rifts to play. There's, again, a link down below to that Kickstarter. You can take a look at that and be notified when it does launch in September. I am working with Brandon to get him on to talk about this. We'll see. We're looking at sometime, maybe end of August, maybe early September. Not quite sure yet. We're still working on those details. But we'll have him on to talk about Phase World and what this is and what it means for Savage Worlds and what kind of things we can expect from it. So look forward to that coming eventually, and we'll look forward to that overall coming in general. Humble Bundles. This ends next week. I don't usually push Humble Bundles, even if they are TTRPG related. I am going to push this one. Why? Because there is a lot of good stuff in this bundle, not just other RPGs, but there is Savage Worlds stuff in here too. From this bundle, you can get the core rules for Savage Worlds. You can get the Deadlands core rules. You can get the rules for what was it? I think for the player's guide for Savage Rifts. You can get the Pine Box Middle School rules, all in this bundle, as well as a whole bunch of other tabletop role-playing games. This is honestly one of the best deals I've ever seen for tabletop role-playing games on Humble Bundle. Just the variety you get a lot of different kinds of games, different systems, different settings, different genres, different play styles. I highly recommend checking this out, even if you don't get the top tier. If you want to get one of the lower tiers, do that. Go ahead and take a look. If you are, after watching this stream, and you realize, maybe I should give Savage Worlds another shot, go buy this bundle, and you'll get access not only to all those other RPGs, but you'll get access to the core rules. You'll get access to Deadlands. We'll go through that a little bit more. But take a look at the Sun Bundle. Again, there should be a link down below in the description. This is a really good deal. I highly recommend doing it. I don't even get any kickback from this or anything. There's no affiliate link down below. I've tried with Sun Bundle. It doesn't seem to work. I'm not sure what's going on with that. But take a look at this big deal. It's a very good deal. So please. Real quick, before we get into that, let's go ahead and talk about some new products that came across my desk and across my Drive Through RPG page, and talk about what they are and what seems interesting about them. There's 2 new ones that I saw this week that I was like, oh, this looks interesting. Let's go ahead and first one is called Thorne-Zai, Death World Descent. This setting is basically a failed terraforming experiment. There was a world that's trying to be terraformed. It didn't really work out, and now the jungle, the forest that is on this planet is now kind of alive. And you're going to have things going wrong, like gravity is going to lie to you. There's going to be your memory is going to fracture. There's going to be some reality that's not really quite right. And this is basically, as they say here, it's a sandbox survival adventure. There's going to be different biomes. There's going to be a lot of environmental hazards and encounters. And then a modular terraformer station that's going to be filled with failing systems, et cetera, that you can work on. So this is going to be a sandbox survival adventure, kind of a little bit space themed, science fantasy survival. Looks fun. It's 95 pages, so nice beefy little PDF to kind of get you going on that. And this looks like a lot of fun. The other one that came across my feed was The Road to Redemption. This is a campaign setting for the good, the bad, and the savage, which is a setting that I mentioned last week. This is a Savage Worlds Adventurers Guild product, so doesn't really have the same level of requirement than the Ace license does. But I think this does seem like a kind of thing that would be good for different kinds of settings, depending on what you're doing. If you're doing Savage Worlds Deadlands, then take a look at it. Maybe if you're doing something a little more normal, maybe take a look at that as well. So be excited about that. One other piece of news that I wanted to talk about that I forgot while I was putting my slides together. Let's switch back to this. Before we kind of dive into this, the other thing I want to mention is Hellbent. If you do not know what Hellbent is, remove the wrong thing. I removed myself instead of the slides. If you're not familiar with Hellbent, well, it's something that was just recently announced, so it's okay if you don't know familiar. If you're familiar with Saving Throw Show, that's something you might be more familiar with because they have done in the past Savage Worlds actual plays. Really well done live streams. They're not pre-recorded. They are live streamed. They were live streamed on Twitch, East Texas University. They had one for Deadlands. And they are, in my opinion, some of the, maybe the best live stream, at the best, but they're definitely one of the best, maybe the best, live streamed actual plays for Savage Worlds. Just really well done, really high quality. The producer of that show is Dom Zook. Let me pull up his message here. I want to make sure I get all the details because he sent me I asked him for some details to make sure that I could talk about it because I'm excited because this new project they're working on is called Hellbent. It's not officially Deadlands. It is still Weird West. There's going to be a lot of things that sound very familiar from Deadlands, but it's not Deadlands. So all the lore of Deadlands is going to be completely different. It's going to be their own little homebrew Weird West setting, but it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. The Marshal, or the game master for this game, is going to be Jasmine Bueller, also known as that Bronze Girl from Critical Role, Dimension 20, and Desi Quest. So a fairly well-known game master who's going to be running Savage Worlds, which is really fun and exciting. The initial goal that they need, though, in order to do this project is they're looking to get $6,500, so $6,500 brought in order to do the first season. They can raise that. It'll go towards making eventually a second season a reality, or anything beyond that. I should say, will be making a second season more of a reality, as well as like adding production value, like costumes, that kind of thing, to the game. They are using a system called Fourth Wall to fundraise. It allows you to support by either buying merch or by making one-time donations or becoming a sustaining member. I personally joined as a sustaining member because I really want to see this happen. I know what Dom is capable of. I know what he and I have had conversations about what his plan is for this. And so it's just super exciting. And I know that this could be a really, really good production to really promote Savage Worlds out there, right? To promote Savage Worlds. So I'm very excited about it. Their deadline, though, to hit this target is August 15th. They need to raise $6,500 by August 15th to start this project. They are casting people for this. It's not going to, we're not doing like, Dom's friends are doing this. This is going to be casted. They have their people are going to get paid for their work on this. The idea is that originally the plan right now is that the show is going to be recorded. It will be heavily edited afterwards for removing silences, removing my ums, right? Removing things that any sort of banter that is not relevant to the game. Trying to remove that down, kind of focusing on the story, and also adding in like effects and maybe little explanations, tips at the bottom that explain what the players are doing, why they're doing that kind of thing. Dom went into a lot of detail of what he's planning on doing in the live stream he did recently, but trying to synthesize all I can down for you. There's going to be recaps at the beginning of each episode and other things like that. They're going to have pop-up explanation cards. There's going to be a video and a podcast version of this, so there'll be a version specifically designed for the podcasting, so you can hear things well, all that kind of stuff. That being said, unlike previous shows, there is going to be limited interactive engagement. The closest thing that you'll get is that if you are a sustaining backer, I mean, if you like become a member and like support them continually, you can kind of like vote in polls and stuff and give like feedback on where you think the story should be going, that kind of thing. But otherwise, there's not going to be like any sort of interaction like there was before. It used to be like back in their other shows, if you gave like tips, or bits, I think it's what's called, or subs or whatever on Twitch. I'm not a Twitch person. I don't do Twitch. Then you can like give free rerolls to the players, not bennies. So there are specific rerolls like extra credit in the ETU game, that kind of thing. There's not going to be that kind of engagement during like a live stream or anything. They're going to try to keep this make this in a way that can be very clean and therefore like very clean, well put, so that people can go and enjoy it without having to be like interrupted. I know one of the things that always annoys me when I do listen to ETU is I skip through all the kind of stuff at the beginning that I'm like, I don't want to hear about all this other stuff. And also like hearing the random interruptions, but hey, thank you, Eduardo, for the bits or whatever. That's all gonna be out. It's gonna be all focused in on the game, letting the players play out the game, not get interrupted. It's gonna be very clean, probably like 60-90-minute episodes, something like that. I'm very excited about it. But they do need to get the money in to get all the equipment, get all the pay people to get the right table and everything that they want. And that goal of $6,500 is a deadline of August 15th. So 1 month from today. Let's see. I know I did find out where we can keep up on this. So let me go ahead and find that real quick, because there was some information about like where we can keep up on where we can keep like what the status is. There we go. That's what I'm trying to say. Sorry, I'm trying to find the one. There we go. And I'll throw this in the chat real quick, so you guys can see this, and so that you guys can know where you can back. So over there, that's savingsthrowshow.com. I'll drop this in the description, but it's at least in the chat right now. Savingsthrowshow.com/shows, and there is a link somewhere on there to back this and become, tries to help make this become a possibility. I'm very excited about it, though. I'm excited to see like a talented cast. I'm excited to see a talented game master, and I just really want to hope that it can help showcase Savage Worlds to a whole new group of people. That's what I'm here for. I want to see people play Savage Worlds because it's a good game, despite what people say. So let's go ahead and talk about why people don't play Savage Worlds, why people skip it, why people go from being skeptics eventually, starting out, to and then like what really happens and why they end up loving Savage Worlds. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and talk about that. Let's see. There we go. All right. So why do people skip Savage Worlds? Now, before we kind of dive in, I want to be clear that what I did here in order to kind of synthesize down some reasons I found is I used an AI research feature that basically goes through and goes through the internet and tries to find reasons people said they didn't like Savage Worlds, and then it gives you like, here's all these Reddit posts and everything that like what people didn't like about Savage Worlds or whatever. And it kind of synthesized down to like 5 things. And generally, I think these are a good 5 reasons. And then we're going to talk about why these are not real reasons you should not like Savage Worlds. And I've definitely heard all of these said by people before. So this is not like something like AI didn't like make it up. I did specifically use a research function in order to make sure that it found things. And I also want to talk about why this is not like why these reasons are not necessarily proper reasons, because we want people to play the game, right? And I want to talk about like what you can kind of respond to. So like as an evangelist, almost as an apologist, maybe as a Savage Worlds apologist, why this is a good thing that games have. So I'll start with swingy combat, right? I feel like we've all heard that before. You've all heard combat is too swingy, it's unpredictable. This is all because of exploding dice. The game mechanic, which if you roll the highest on the die, it keeps going. And we all have that story of that one person who just kept rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling, and it just goes crazy, right? Just absolute insane amount of damage, and just takes out the big bad evil guy in one hit. Now if you're familiar with Savage Worlds enough, you probably know there are ways to mitigate that, like having resilient or unstoppable or other things like that kind of prevent that kind of thing happening. Wound cap is one of those things as well. But nevertheless, it does happen. And even when you do have those things on, it tends to happen or can happen. And sometimes those things, in my opinion, actually work against what the point of the game is. But we'll get into that. We're not going to answer why yet. But a lot of people are used to games with a lot of what we're going to call HP bloat. A gradual attrition combat model. Everyone's kind of expecting that more player character and enemy character durability. They're not expecting things to be able to explode like that and just have an insane damage out of nowhere type of situation. And because of that, people often just hoard their bennies so that they can soak the damage. And inadvertently, just this mindset reduces fun and that furious engagement with the system. So that's the first reason. That's the first reason that people do. And we're going to go through all 5 reasons why. I'm going to include one other one that I've mentioned. That I might include into like one of the books or one of the points in a moment. But I have one other one I want to mention from a friend of mine's perspective, who I've been trying to convince to try out Savage Worlds. Second thing is the shaking mechanic and death spirals. Now, the shaking mechanic itself, people don't like that. It's like, oh, if you get shaken, you lose your turn. And that just seems anti-fun. I do think that that's not as bad as it used to be. People used to be that like when you were shaken, you had to make a spirit roll. If you succeeded, you were unshaken, but you didn't get your turn. You had to get a raise to get your turn. That's gone now. It's changed to now if you succeed on your spirit roll to unshake, you unshake and you get your turn. So that is a lot different than it used to be. And it used to be like a lot more like, stun lock, like you're stunned, you're there, you can't do anything. I don't know if this is true in the old versions, but you can do things while you're shaken. You can move. You can't really take any actions, but you can use your other things like movement. I think you can also use your limited free actions as well. But that might be technically an action, so maybe not. I haven't thought about that until like just now. So yeah. On top of the shaking condition, there's also like the death spiral that we get into because of wound penalties and fatigue. And I talked about this recently in my death and dying video for the tabletop community spotlight for Tales from Elsewhere. And I had to make it a very brief video, so it ended up being like 3.5 minutes to explain this. But the death spiral in Savage Worlds, I don't perceive it as actually being like that ridiculous, right? I like that there is, when I am hurt, things are now worse for me, because that just makes sense. It makes narrative sense to me. But on top of that, like the penalties that we get, like, yes, they can be significant. Like -3 can be a significant thing. At the same time, it can also not be a significant thing. If I have a, let's say I have a D8 in something, and I'll say I have a D8, and I have a 50% chance I can roll a, sorry, no, bad math. Ignore me. I still have a fairly high chance, not just because of like a high die, but I also have my wild die, so I have more chance of acing. Acing helps me get there as well. Bennies help me re-roll. There's a lot of ways to kind of mitigate those penalties, and those penalties are still there. They may have to be mitigated, but there is ways to mitigate them, and so that makes, like, I'm already going to the, like, why that doesn't matter. But point being that they are there, right? The death spirals are there, but I don't think they're as serious as they need to be, or as people think they are. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. The third thing is a lack. People think there's a lack of character depth. People have gone on record saying that they feel like starting characters feel too similar to one another, that they lack the granular mechanical distinctions often found in other systems, where, like, games like D&D, where each class is very different from each other. You can, like, if you're a cleric, you're not a barbarian. If you're a wizard, you're not a fighter. And so there's, like, these very strong distinctions because of your class. Now, and then there's, in Savage Worlds, you only have 5 core attributes. They're very small in, like, as far as their scale, like D4 to D12. That's only like 5 steps of range. Same thing with skill list. The skill list is shorter than some other games like D&D. You have edges, but there's only so many edges. I think there's a lot of edges, like, right, but again, get ahead of myself. But players who are transitioning from games like D&D and Pathfinder, for some reason they feel like all the characters look the same, and I think that's because there's not this, like, again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Must stop. That's one of the reasons people don't like Savage Worlds, though. They think that there's not enough character depth for character creation. Okay. Combat complexity. People think that, despite that Savage Worlds marketing is fast, furious, fun, they feel like combat is slow. I did a whole entire video about this on combat in Savage Worlds, and, like, the things that might actually be slow and some of the things that aren't really slow. Like, there's multiple die rolls, but D&D has that, where it's like roll a hit, roll damage, right? But then there's also some calculations that happen, and I think there's some, like, validity to that. There are some various modifiers. Sometimes we spend a little more time than I like to, like, calculate toughness, or just calculate, like, armor piercing and bonuses and all this other stuff. Then if someone's going to soak it, that's another roll that's happening. That's not even on that player's turn. That's going to happen. So things, they feel like because combat is more complex, that's not very fast. So there's that. The last reason, and I've heard this one before, is what we're going to call information scattering. In that, if you are at the game store and you see a book on the table, maybe you see Deadlands on the shelf, and you're like, oh, I want to play that game. You pull that off, and you're looking at it, and you're about to buy it, and you see this little thing that says, requires the Savage Worlds core rules. And for a lot of people, that's an immediate turnoff, because they go, oh, I need to have this other book that tells me how to play the game, and then this book. And we also have some, and this is where I do get into a state where I'm like, I don't really like this, where we sometimes have books or setting books that require not only the core rules, but they require a particular companion, whether it be the fantasy companion, the sci-fi companion, or the superheroes companion. And then on top of that, the setting book. And so you need 3 books to play this one setting. And so people don't really like that. I think that they like, because it's toolkit nature, it ends up being like the information is spread across lots of different resources, lots of different sources. And I heard this as a, particularly as a thing that recently, so from friends of mine, if you go watch What is Tabletop, they're really great. I like the guys a lot. I'm on their Discord. And one of the things they said about, they don't like about Deadlands, is that Deadlands also requires the core rules. They have 2 books for the one game, versus some other agnostic systems, generic systems have said, hey, go ahead and take our system, put it in your book. Kind of like what we see for Solomon Kane, right? We have the Solomon Kane book, has the core rules and Solomon Kane setting all tie into one book. Same thing with Savage Pathfinder. It's all in one book. People like that. They don't like it as much and this is one of the reasons that people don't play Savage Worlds, because they see that and they skip it. Okay, so that's the reasons why. I'm going to go ahead and go over the comments real quick before we dive into things too much further. Make sure I don't miss anything. Ken says, I think a lot of people associate Savage Worlds with only Deadlands, and if that setting doesn't appeal to them, they write it off. That's a fair point. Yeah, I think a lot of people do. Especially since because Deadlands is such a heavily supported product, because it is Pinnacle's main intellectual property, right? It is fully like Shane and his and company who are making that particular game, in that particular setting, right? So a lot of people, I think, do associate that, especially since like when they search for Savage Worlds, it often comes up with Deadlands actual plays. A lot of Savage Worlds actual plays are just Deadlands. Sounds Like Crows was Deadlands. E6 Universe, Wildcards did a Deadlands one. Who was the other? Someone else did one too. Someone's doing one right now. Oxventure, I think is what's called. Like they're doing one right now. That's also Deadlands. Heck, even I think even Critical Role did a Deadlands one, and I remember they're not going well. I don't remember why. I think they did a Deadlands one as well. So there's just a lot of Deadlands is very associated with Savage Worlds. So we need to work on that. That was one of my disappointment with the Hellbent, is that's going to be a Weird West game. Like, how could we do like not Weird West? But at the same time, I think the Weird West will appeal to a lot of people, so I'm not like that upset about it. Let's see here. Replying to losing fun casting and missing in other games is kind of crappy, where you spend 5 to 20 minutes waiting until your turn, casting fail, and not spend. Yeah, we'll get to that for sure. Maybe I should wait for these responses until I get to the reasons why people stay. Just going to skip around to that, and I'll get back to the comments. So why people? I guess I did the same thing twice. Whoops. Why changes their mind? I wasn't able to do this as like one-offs. So for Swing Combat, it's embracing the pulp action. Eventually, people realize that no, like it's not a bug. The swinging nature of not a bug. It's a feature. That's what it's supposed to do. We're supposed to have this swingy game. The very lethality and swinging nature is what deters people is usually what's celebrated. It's that cinematic action, that quick resolution, the pulp action movie. It's just a lot of fun. The distinction between wildcards and extras kind of helps with that as well. Not just in the fact that they're called extras, like a movie set, but also because it means that they can just be easily taken out, and that gives heroes and player characters the sense of accomplishment really quickly. But so does that high damage roll. If a player rolls high damage, that's a lot of fun for usually everyone at the table, because they're not only just seeing a lot of damage, they're also seeing everybody else going, oh wow, they keep going. Everyone's getting pretty involved when things start acing like that, which is why I'm a big fan of open, like really are out in the open rolling, because then everyone kind of gets to get engaged in it and see what happens. And that kind of goes the reverse way for GMs too, where because like when you roll really high, you're like, hey, that's 32 damage. Everyone goes, oh no, like everyone gets that reaction of like, oh no. I almost TPK'd my party last Friday. We were playing Savage Pathfinder, and it's fortunate that they had 2 ally NPCs with them that were fully under their control. And I always have been, except for role-playing moments that they had with them. But all 3 of my players were down at one point. And it like crazy is like high tension. Like, okay, is this going to be it? Like, is the GM going to kill us all? And it was kind of a lot of fun. And a lot of that was from like multiple, like just straight up aces rolls or just like just strong attacks, right? Players who eventually returned to the system and because they originally didn't like this idea of heavy acing combat, they often experience a shift in their understanding of how tabletop role-playing game combat in general works. They transition from expecting this like tactical simulation of attrition that they see in other systems, and then they kind of embrace this more narrative simulation that is seen in Savage Worlds. The more like daring feats and resource management, and like enjoying the exploding dice and the wildcard extra like changes, and it really enables them to enjoy this pulp action feel better. So basically, it often comes down to just understanding the focus on story versus the focus on like mechanical attrition, etc. All right, now I'm going to stop for any comments on that. No, I think I'm just going to keep going. We'll get to the comments. I'll get to the comments. On top of that, we're talking about shaken in death spirals. So why do people come back? Well, like I said, the frustration, the shaken mechanic, I'm pretty sure has been mostly resolved with the newest edition because it's not just a stun lock anymore. It can be if you're not very good at Spirit, but you can still spend bennies to unshake, all that kind of stuff. The way that the system kind of works is that it shifts the responsibility for survival and tactical success more directly on the players through the use of the bennies, right? And also using more actions. It's not just hit and move on. Like it's working through all those obstacles that you do have other opportunities to do. You can work through those obstacles with other options like tests, support roles, those kind of things. Is when the players start actually understanding the strategic depth of the game with having more bennies at their disposal, other ways to mitigate penalties like wild attacking and desperate attacks, and or getting past certain armor with called shots. Savage Worlds does actually have a lot of very strategic depth. It's just very different depth from what a lot of like HP based games like Pathfinder and D&D are like. There's a lot of different options that are just they're different. They're still very tactical. And again, the penalties can be mitigated. So I kind of started talking about that before, so I kind of rambling a little bit right here. But there is a lot of ways in Savage Worlds to mitigate these penalties, like wound penalties. There's ways to get around the shaken condition. You can still succeed. Again, I think a lot of the problems with shaken is, again, was pre-swayed. So I'm not going to go too much into that because I think a lot of that has been fixed in the way that it works now. So then, okay, what about lack of character depth? I don't understand this one, if I want to be completely honest. This one, I'm like, I tried reading like people said, I'm like, what? I don't see how characters look very much samey. And maybe it's just because it's just the way I work and the way that I see things, the way that I picture characters and then build characters is if you go watch my character creation video on how I make Luke Foster, who is like this like noir detective, he feels very different to me than any normal character. Now, could I take that character and plop him into a sci-fi game? Probably, yeah. In that sense, maybe there's a little bit of sameness in that I could take the same character concept and like bump him into different settings and everything would work mechanically the same. And I think that's fine though, because of the way that I do character creation is that when I put these skills in, I'm thinking of the character. And so I think the way you need to make sure you go back to character creation so that your character doesn't feel shallow is to ensure you're going into the character creation with a attitude of this character with a character concept, right? But between the different hindrances you can have, which I think change up characters a lot, between the different edges you can get at character creation and beyond, I think changes the characters a lot. And I think there is enough skills and different attributes that things don't have to feel samey. Now, I do think that one of the things that can happen is that because I don't think there's a true jump stat. I don't think any of the attributes, there's any like dump attribute. I do think that there is an element which players can understandably go D6 across. I think that's a lot of recommendations out there is say, hey, do D6 across all the attributes. That I'm like, not the biggest fan of. I think I like the idea of like, hey, like choosing a stat to be like, this character is not going to be good at this, and that's fine. So when it comes to like, hey, is there like a lot of complexity? I don't, or is there enough complexity in character creation? I think there is. On top of that, when you do start to progress your character, you do start realizing like, what are the things that you want to be good at? Do you want to be good at supporting? One of the characters I like to make a lot is a good character who's like really good at support roles. I like making characters who are good at tests. I don't get to play very often. I like to play characters who have. I also like to really play characters who have powers, not because of the power's sake, but because I like to show off the incredible depth of how you can do powers between limitations and trappings and the naming the powers. When I made my one character for like a one shot, I went to a lot of depth of like naming each power and making sure I knew exactly what it looked like when I added his power. For instance, like I had a healing power that was like I had a tattoo of a snake on my arm, and whenever I healed someone because it requires touch, the tattoo of the snake would become alive, slither down my arm, wrap around their wound, and like heal it before slithering back up into my arm. Like that kind of thing. That sounds like a lot of fun. So I think that I think I understand that like in some sense that there may be not as many options as some games, but I still think there's plenty of options, and you can still create that kind of archetypal character if you want to. And if your character is the same as another character, I think that's more of a your problem than a game problem. But that's not the best way to tell people like, hey, you're wrong because that's just on you. There is a lot of options, and it's just making sure that you understand how the game works and how the system works, so you can see all the options available to you that you can interact with mechanically. On top of that, narratively, there's also a lot of narrative things you can do. Let's hear next. So next thing here is streamlined mechanics. So there is definitely a sense in which there is a lot of options in combat that most games don't have, right? We have wild attacks, we have desperate attacks, we have called shots, we have support roles, you have Garrett bonuses, all those kind of things. But the nice part is that it is, for the most part, it is a simple, straightforward system. You roll fighting, and you resolve that fighting law. The resolution, I think, of the game is pretty quick. You roll, because you usually know the target number. And like for me, what I do for combatants is once someone rolls and they get above the parry, I tell them what the parry score is. I'm like, hey, cool. Now that you've done that, like their parry is this. Now you know what you need to hit in order to hit their parry. Same thing with toughness. Once they do enough, get across the damage threshold, one time they now know how much damage they need to do in order to actually affect this guy. So I think that adds like a level of like understanding like that your character is good at fighting and they know what they need to do. Our characters, they know what they need to accomplish, and they know how much they need to, like how much effort they need to exhume. And that all kind of like resolves itself pretty easily because like it's either target number is either 4 or target number is whatever number, parry or toughness. And I think once people grasp like more of the underlying philosophy of what maybe originally seems like cumbersome, once people understand initiative, once they understand how to like go and hold, and once people basically understand the strategy that you can utilize in a game, because every game strategy does look different for combat. Once you understand it, it actually is super engaging and can be extremely fast and furious. Kind of going along with that with the shaking condition we were talking about before, is that like even if you do lose your turn, and like that hit and whiff thing kind of happens in other games too, right? Like where you wait for your turn and then you just don't actually do anything, you don't accomplish anything. All right, roll a hit, you miss, okay, move on. Not very fun. That's a whole other topic on how you can say, hey, don't say you miss, be more descriptive. But that your turn comes around a lot sooner, I think, in Savage Worlds. Even if you start at the beginning of the round and the end of the next round because of the way the initiative is dealt, I think you tend to be, your turn comes up a lot more. Also, I rarely have combat. Combat rarely goes longer than 5 rounds for me, and so, which is a lot. It's quicker than a lot of things. Lastly, for information scattering, I am going to grant there is information scattered across a lot of books. I'm not the biggest fan of that, but that's true of a lot of other games too. It's not just Savage Worlds. Even in D&D, regardless if you take ignore the Dungeon Master's Guide and ignore the Monster Manual. When I first started playing D&D back in 2014, back when they first came out, I just had the core rulebook and I had my setting book, and that was it. That's all I needed. I didn't need the other 2 books. But once more player options came out, a lot of people want those books. They want the Player's Handbook. They want Tasha's Cauldron and everything. They want Xanthar's Guide to whatever. I don't remember what it's called. Xanthar's Guide to something. They want all those character options, and those are spread out. So I get like the spread out thing, but it's not unique to Savage Worlds. But one of the things that we need to understand, like Savage Worlds does this because it is extremely versatile. One of the things I love is that I can go pick and choose things from not just from the books, but I can also go to the Adventurers Guild and grab some stuff off there, and it integrates so seamlessly into the game. One of the things I love about Savage Worlds is that because of how versatile it is, so generically genre agnostic, that you can play I use this in a video. You can play battle lords and like mech fighting battle lords, or you can play as dust bunnies on the couch, both using Savage Worlds. Both make sense. Both the system works great for them, and it just jives well. And so one of the things that people I think do get kind of hung up on is that they don't see this game as a toolbox game. They go, okay, I have access to all these options. Maybe they go, okay, yes, I'm playing fantasy, so I don't have access to rocket launchers and guns, but everything else that's the rules. And instead, it's like, no, you can change the rules based on whatever you're using, right? You can use the rule for like the fantasy companion that says, hey, the Wizard Edge is not available to you. Or you could say, no, the Wizard Edge is. Do whatever you want. And all of these like different systems, the modularity of the game, they really fit really well together, very easily, and they make sense, and they are they make sense, and it feels simple enough. Like it's not overcomplicating the game. And that generic nature is the thing that my one friend is not. Well, that's what the thing he says, like, oh, I don't think it's actually going to be for me, is because the game is setting agnostic, right? Now, one of the things that I should mention to him is that technically Pathfinder is setting agnostic. You don't need the setting of Galorian or how you pronounce it to play Pathfinder. But like you can play Pathfinder in whatever setting you want. But I get his point. It's like, at least Pathfinder is designed for high adventure. Like I said, I don't think that that's a problem for Savage Worlds. I think maybe it is a problem for other games. I saw someone mention GURPS earlier. I don't know how GURPS handles this or how well they handle it, but I do find that Savage Worlds just handles genre changes without a problem. I think ideally, your game kind of becomes a background to whatever's happening in the world. And I do think that Savage Worlds is just really well designed for still having deep mechanical strategy, tactical ability, married to really good narration, right? One of the things I didn't get into is I think the subsystems in Savage Worlds, some people don't like subsystems. Mike Shea from the Sly Flourish podcast, he doesn't like subsystems because he's like, skill checks do everything. Like, well, I think subsystems can add a lot of narration to things that just don't feel right in a game, right? We want the game to feel natural. We want the game to feel good. I think they said like a good rule creates good feelings, and I think a lot of subsystems in Savage Worlds do that. But I think these subsystems work really well for the generic nature. And so, like, would I like to see to kind of go directly to like the point of information scattered everywhere? Is that would I like to see like a Deadlands book with the Savage Worlds core rules built into it? Yeah, I could understand like why that'd be nice. I would like to see a system reference document for Savage Worlds so that people can create a book with the rules included, and they don't have to. Now I understand, like, again, I understand why, like, we don't do that and everything, but I think a lot of people, I think it can be a point of contention that prevents people from getting into a game because they see a good setting and they want to buy it, but they say, oh, I need this other book too. Never mind, extra cost, whatever. So something to think about. I know some other games, I think like Cypher System, I think Genesis, they all put the core rules into. I don't think they required like the core rules of that game to play the other ones, but maybe I'm wrong. All right, let's talk about some comments real quick. Let's see here. There's a lot of comments. I'm going to go ahead and go back here. Wyatt says, I would sooner it be swings with 3 wounds that can be soaked than I hit for 12 points damage. How many does he have left? 57? Geez, it's going to take forever. Wake me up. Yeah. I'd rather have a quick like wound system of Savage Worlds that is yet Death Spirally over just the foreverness of some other games. Colton says, many OSR games feel just as swingy, worlds without numbers. My players have not complained about it because I hammered it into them that OSR combat is lethal. Yep. Shadow Dark combat is lethal. I wouldn't say it's not true OSR, but yeah, that's lethal. Same thing can be true. One of the things that comes to, like, one of the things I've heard recently about D&D actually is that D&D is actually technically very swingy. And it's just in a different kind of swingy. A D20 has a 5% chance equally across all possibilities. Whereas in Savage Worlds, because we have a wild die, and because our target number is fairly static, our chances are also pretty static. Now, D&D has bonuses, a lot of other games have bonuses, but still, you get the idea. Yeah, so good, sounds good. Frank, you said, when I got introduced to Savage Worlds, I went into a character creation spree because you can build almost any company you have it in mind. That's what I'm saying. That's how I feel. I remember when I first got my Suede book, we were taking a road trip to me and my guys from college. This is after college. We were on a road trip to Niagara Falls. And I was like just reading through the core rule book and just thinking, oh man, how many different characters could I create with this? It was like right after I got the shipment from the Kickstarter. It wasn't my first Savage Worlds experience, but like I kind of got back into it again with the Savage Worlds Adventure Edition stuff. And yeah, I crossed with like so many different ideas of characters I could create. How could I create a rogue? How could I create a barbarian? Like just going through the archetypes. Sorry. How could I create a Gish, right? Like there's so many different options there. Same with Shadow Dark Lethality, where you can be level 3 with 3 total hit points. Yeah. I think that lethality has more to do with like the rolling of your hit points than it does with like the swinginess of damage. But either way, it's lethal, right? Let's see here. I think I just need them to do the same thing with Savage Worlds. Hammer it into them that combat is not balanced, and you need to stack combat in your favor. Yeah, you need to take advantage of different situations. You need to. One of the things we also need to worry about, like, and I'm going to work on a video about this because that's what the poll definitely is leading to, is how do we make interesting combats? How do we make interesting counters for Savage Worlds? Because we can't make them balanced. We've kind of recognized that like, balancing combat is not a thing that you can do. But you can make sure that the combat is interesting and that there's clear success and everything. If you watch Peter Saloon and I's podcast, TPK 101, we go over encounter design. There was a video that was supposed to come out when I first got to here in Scotland that unfortunately there was audio issues. I also republished it when I got back from Scotland. So that's why there's like this like long delay between our episodes. Also, he's a busy guy and it's hard to keep everything together. But nevertheless, yeah, you need to make sure combat's lethal. It can be very lethal both ways. Just be prepared for it. Let's see here. Yeah, Savage Worlds Pathfinder is more intuitive than Pathfinder itself. I like it a lot. I do not like Pathfinder First Edition because it's just I used to play 3.5 back in college, and I now realize how complicated it is and how like just too much it is for me. Yeah, let's see here. Information scattering. 80-20 game is worse. That was like GURPS. One rule book, one studying book. Heck, I used to write term papers using girls' books. Okay. Okay, GURPS got it. Gary says, but D&D requires multiple books too. I think that part of the reason might be the fact that it can be anything. It can be anything and not a particular thing. Yeah. Yeah. Again, D&D can use multiple books. Like you have the Pathfinder, but even like, you look at a game like Shadow Dark, right? Which is like everyone's like touting as like, hey, it's everything in one book. Which I'm like, yeah, that's not new, but it's everything in one book. But it's only fantasy, right? It's only this like, it's not sci-fi or everything. Now they do have like this way of doing things like frameworks, which to me are just setting rules, but still, you get the idea. Colton says, running OSR games actually felt very natural after writing years of Savage Worlds. I can just embrace unbalanced combats now and go more rule. Cool. Yeah, I think that's actually one of the problems. The player that I was talking about, I think that's one of the things that he's going to be having struggle with because he's like he's a big first edition Pathfinder player. He loves first edition Pathfinder because he loves to basically like get into the weeds of the system and like really break things down. Remember, he was talking to me about some rule back in like April or March. And I was just like, that's too deep, man. That's too deep. Like specific rules around like creatures flying in hurricanes. I'm like, I don't need that. Too much. But I will say I backed the latest Kickstarter for Shadow Dark, and I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on the books. Not only because the books are really pretty, but I really like that this very simple way of doing gaming. And I think it looks really simple. I like that. I have another one of my friends who's really into OSR, so he's like really into Cairn and Knave, mostly Cairn second edition. Or well, no, he likes first edition too. He doesn't like how much stuff there is to Cairn second edition, but he likes Cairn. So I think I can understand like that like switch from Savage Worlds to OSR being enjoyable. Ted says there is more drama with having 2 or 3 wounds to soak versus an ever decreasing portion of your points. I agree. Yeah. Wyatt says in regards to character depth is what you make it. As much as I like details in one source book, I am a researcher. Sorry. In our Rippers game, I research things like Victorian holiday traditions, etc. Yeah, good. Yeah, all right. Colin says, on character depth, I've noticed that certain skills are high priority skills and everyone picks them up. As my players leveled up, their characters started to converge on the same skills. Yeah, likely notice and fighting. This thing just died. You're up. Yeah, luckily notice and fighting. I do feel like everyone thinks that they have to have fighting, like regardless of what game they play. Like, oh, I need to have fighting. It's like we played ETU, and my players were like, well, I want to have some parry, so I need to take fighting. It's like, no, you don't have to have parry. Well, my players, my current game, my Savage Pathfinder game, he doesn't have any parry. He doesn't have the. I think he does. I think he's like a D4 in fighting. So his parry is like 4, maybe 5 because he's got a spear or something like that. Maybe one of his skills is your toughness. It's either toughness or parry is like super low. Maybe it's his toughness is like 2 because he has no vigor. And I'm like all here for it. I'm like super excited about it. Not because I'm like going to hit him and stuff, because he's not playing that kind of character. He's playing a character who is purposely staying back while the other 2 idiots run into combat. I love it. That's an interesting. I never heard that phrase before, Colton. Class protection. I'm gonna make a note of that because actually that sounds I like that a lot. Class protection. Having a class, I assume it means like having a class means that no one else is going to like it's harder for another person to kind of creep in on your territory of like what role you are doing in a game. I assume that's what that means. I get that, but I think that's also just like I feel like I like it. In Savage Worlds, I think players should be more motivated by their character stories and how their character is developing and what things that their character wants to be good at and what things they want to try to help prevent in the future, not necessarily the things that, what's the best mechanical thing for me to do to make sure I'm good in combat, that kind of thing. Definitely things trappings, yeah, that's definitely part of it. Again, Savage Worlds is just really good at narrative, so like I like people when they take their edges to explain what their edges look like their edges, not just their powers, but their edges, their skills. Like what does it look like for you for this edge to like be applicable? Yeah. Anderson says my only maths is toughness to raises, as in like what's a raise or a toughness. I have thought about maybe having my players change the toughness to a modifier, or having like their raises written out on their character sheets. So they can just go, this much damage, cool, let's say between these two numbers, make a wound. Or if they do change it into a penalty, it's just like, okay, take that much off, and we just eventually learn our multiplication table of 4s. Spike says, I found some trouble getting my spellcasters to interact with the power section. They basically wanted a spell list to pull from, even though I said that powers are way cooler or more flexible. Yeah, so I talked about this last week, actually. A lot of people want fancy and magic. They want, and this actually includes one of the reasons my players plays a barbarian and not a caster, which he plays in every other game we've ever played, is because he's not a fan of the way the powers work, because he likes that like list of spells. My problem with that, the problem with the list of spells is multiple, and I kind of go over that last week. But there ends up being, if you look at D&D, right, there's a power creep in D&D spells where like these eventually it becomes a point where like these spells are bad, these spells are good. Don't ever take this spell. Always take this spell. Like Silvery Barbs, always take Silvery Barbs. And then like Guidance, I think it is, or True Strike, like that. It's like this absolute garbage spell, and no one likes it. Everyone says like don't take it. It's the same thing as giving the help action. So it kind of, by having like this power system, I think it kind of avoids that, but it still allows for creation and customization. My encouragement is to look at my last video and see that light's dead too. These lights are not lasting as long as I thought they would. I do have them like 100% brightness. That's part of the problem. Sorry. Check out my last video, my last live stream, and see if that helps all. White says I would sooner have a flat bonus than stacked bonuses where you have to determine the type of bonuses, morale bonus, dodge bonus, etc. I'm not sure if I quite understand what you're saying there, Wyatt, but I heard. Let's see here. What we say? I didn't have a problem with powers. I think it's about the powers. Players had a very developed ideas in my Star Wars game. One caster was a droid conglomerate. His summon ally power was detaching a droid himself. See, and that's a great trapping. Like I love that. I love that kind of trapping. I love it when trappings like that are just like so like out there, and like they show up these trappings of like this like really like far out things. Love it. Oh, my other player was inspired by Titanfall, so his weird science powers all revolved around his jetpack. Sweet, love it. Yeah. I come to TDRBs for swinging, unexpected outcomes, respect the story I just want to tell. Yeah, exactly. Love it. And that's something that people have to kind of eventually let go of. Is like, it honestly takes some practice. I mentioned this in my most recent video as well. Is that like, it does take some practice to get used to like figuring out what you want the dice to mean, and you know how you figure that out is by practicing. You figure out what the dice are trying to tell by practicing your improv at the table, interpreting the dice, etc. Let's see here. Oh, good. As it says, we played Monster Hunter Club, and the only one of the kids had fighting. I like it. It was really fun and amusing, but man, those kids took some hits. I'm sure they did. It's okay though because it's set in the '80s, when kids weren't as wimpy. Okay, there you go. David says it takes time to make players understand that social characters without any fighting skills can be incredibly useful in combat. Every D&D player at my table that got that part fell in love with Savage Worlds. Yeah, and I think my players are still trying to understand that. I mean, partially because we're playing Savage Pathfinder right now, which so like every class still has like some sort of combat centrism. But that's one of the things I love about Savage Worlds. I'm playing in a D&D game right now. We play like once a month for 2 hours, so not very much. And I made a character that was like a class from the Adventures Mill Earth book, where they don't have any combat ability. Like they are not proficient with anything except for simple weapons and simple armor. They don't have magic, and their only abilities is really to heal and to learn knowledge. And I felt incredibly useless in combat because all I could do was like help action, help action, heal, help action, heal, help action, help action. And I like the kind of the ability to heal and stuff in combat, but I did feel quite useless. So yeah, I like that in Savage Worlds I can test, I can support, I can provide gang up, all that kind of stuff. Ted says non-combat characters can still take advantage of the vast majority of combat mechanics and Swayed for reasonable expectation success. Yeah, and I think that's wonderful. It makes it so like you don't need to have fighting. Like if the people who were saying that like everyone's like gravitating towards certain skills, probably fighting or shooting or something like that, like you don't have to. You can just go away from fighting. You don't need to have fighting, especially like, and it doesn't make sense for a lot of characters to have fighting. I think even in some games, maybe it's good to have like one character who has fighting, maybe because they took karate. They had like ETU wildcards and everything. You know, that was good. Yeah, it's been good. Venta says, also hope you've been enjoying Scotland. It's been an adventure. I'll say that. I'm visiting there at the end of August to meet up with my online TTRPG group. Nice. Well, enjoy. I will be leaving here August 19th. So I will talk briefly about my calendar. Next week we'll be on with the show. The week after I'll be off because I have my anniversary that day. The 5th and the 12th, we should be good to go to have a live stream then. And then the 19th, I'll be gone because that's the day I'm traveling back to the US. And then 26th, so going forward, I have no idea. But that gives you, so there's gonna be a couple misses here in the next month, but we'll be around. Yeah, Cold says you don't need fighting. I built an illusionist with high taunt and rabble browser. That was amazing. Yeah, there's a lot of like really interesting, I think like taunt builds. I'm really curious to use and like try out. But again, I mostly play. I don't tend to play. I mostly GM. I'm not sure what I just said, but I GM mostly. Play very rarely. I should get a chance to play here soon though, because we do a very like a 3-session game in between every book of the adventure path we're doing for Rise of the Rune Lords. So we just ended book 3. We're probably going to do a little bit more next session, and then after that, basically when I get back from Scotland, it should be someone's turn to do a little like 3-episode one-shot. So looking forward to that. Although we might just skip that just because I've been gone for a while and we haven't played a whole lot. So yeah. All right. Well, that's everything I have. Let me go and check to see if we have the newsletter. Oh, we do. Let's go ahead and pop that open. We'll talk about it real quick. We'll not spend too much time on it, and we'll go from there. So let's see here. Need to share screen. Share newsletter. There we go. All right, you should be able to see that. Yeah, cool. All right. Doomguard launches next Tuesday. We already talked about that. Make sure there's something you need to. Oh, wait, what's this? Or rebel against onslaught of alien Vespori, ripped further pages as popular history evil. You receive all 3 options when the game ships. Additionally, this campaign also is also in support of the brand new Doomguard RPG setting book for use with Necessary Evil. That's cool. Okay, so there's going to be a new Savage Worlds product that goes along with this. So all you people who are into Savage Worlds, you're going to want to get this so you can get that book. That's pretty cool. I like that. So it's a full 10-act plot point campaign where Doomguard unravels a globe-spanning conspiracy. Sweet. Guidelines for mixing Doomguard with Necessary Evil, Cosmic Crisis, and more. Hindrances. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Definitely makes me even more interested in participating. Your Bottle Northwest PDFs are available if you backed the Kickstarter or that campaign. All those things should be available. I did get my PDF for Rise of the Black Circle novel, so I don't know if I got the rest of them though. I'll look into it. Let's see here. Superpowers Companion is now available on Foundry. Cool, good. Moving on. Pathfinder for Savage Worlds is on sale for Steam and Fantasy Grounds. Sorry, I might have to do a video eventually talking about the different options for Savage Worlds on BTTs and asking you all like which ones you guys use. I feel like a lot of people, from what I hear, really like Foundry because it doesn't work like for a lot of reasons. I haven't heard a lot about Fantasy Grounds, so I'm curious to hear from you all like how good like these deals are, or how good each of these VTTs are. Let's see your convention news. Gen Con, July 31st to August 3rd. Savage Worlds people will be there. Pinnacle will be there. BrawlCon, which is in Houston, Texas, August 15th to August 17th. And then Gamehole Con, October 16th, 19th in Madison, Wisconsin. Check all those out. I would love to go to these. I don't know if I want to go to Gen Con. It seems like it's too big of a thing. But like Gamehole Con, I definitely feel like I'd like to go to. So hopefully one of these days I'll be able to afford to do so. But not this time. Not this time. Why not this year at least? Okay, for Gamma members, you can vote Jody Black for Publisher Board Representative. She's running for Publisher Representative for Gamma, which is the Game Manufacturers Association. I don't know much about that, but if you are able to, if you're part of this association, you can vote. Go vote Jody. Ace Licensee Spotlight. We have Uncle Ernie's Anarchist Rebellion Movement book. Is the summer catalog, and they have been nominated for an Ennie. If you want to go vote for the Ennies, go vote for them. I don't have a link to that right now, but you search like Ennies voting, you should be able to find it and vote. And you can vote for Battlelords. They're also nominated for different. Like 23rd Productions is also nominated for a different category. I don't remember what it was. So go check that out. You can go vote for all your stuff. Enjoy. For Swag Licensee, Old Troll. Actually, this is Ace license as well. They just got their Ace license. Old Troll Gaming Hole has just unleashed their very first book called Cat's Paw. It is a take on the roles of a modern-day mystic, psychics, and occultist thrust into a desperate race against time. Emily Carter, a young girl of mysterious power and a noble destiny, has vanished, kidnapped by the cult of Ulrich Thun, etc., etc. Yeah, interesting. I like the art on the cover. Looks cool. And then here's the status of things. This is all done. I know I've gotten my Adventure Path 2 all done. Rifts Portal, I'm waiting for these two down here. So I'm just like, guys, finish up your Rift stuff so I can get my Deadlands stuff. And like this one, I'm getting like the full Deadlands Lost Colony. I'm waiting for everything. Like I'm gonna get all the stuff in print. So I'm like, that's gonna be a big order whenever I get that too. So I'm excited for it. But one of my complaints is I do wish that the turnaround on like Kickstarters was a little bit quicker. I know things like take a long time and there's a lot of stuff going on, but that is like one of the things I kind of wish would be a little bit quicker. But I get it. All right, all. Well, thank you for joining me. Let me take a look real quick at the stuff here. Just make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, thanks for congratulations on my anniversary. It's 8 years this year. Professor Frank asked, is Pinnacle subject to the Diamond Comics distributor scandal like Pathfinder and many other publishers are? I haven't heard anything. I've heard about this, like the scandal. I haven't heard anything about Pinnacle being part of it. I don't know if they distribute through them. I know that Yeah, I know that like when I go to game stores and talk about Pinnacle stuff, usually they say, "Oh, our distributors have a really hard time getting a hold of stuff." So I don't think so. Oh, Ted says I didn't see Peg on the Diamond list of Doom. Yeah, I don't know if they just don't distribute for them or they don't like have enough stock of Sentinel stuff to matter. But yeah, I haven't heard anything, and it doesn't sound like it's on this whatever list this is. I'm not familiar with. But yeah. Anyways, thank you all for hanging out with me. I know went a little bit longer than usual, but still, thank you for hanging out. And I'll see you all next week. If you have an idea for a video, leave a comment down below. I am going to try to work on more videos. I have a bunch of scripts written up because that's how I record most part is through scripts. So hopefully we can get Yeah, I knew Studio 2 did like some distribution. I wasn't sure if they're like the only distributors for Pinnacle or if it was like multiple distributors. But yeah. All right. Well, thank you all, and you all have a great day. Enjoy your week, and I'll see you all next week with a topic I have not yet to determine. Cheers.